Shalom and welcome to day 28 of Counting the Omer, and it's the Rabbi's blog as always, and brought again from the inside of the flat today. I'm still working on my book, so it's a more comfortable place to work from. So I'm now just breaking the work up here and bringing the blog to you. I'm going to speak today from a very important passage from Isaiah. And it's this from chapter 56, where it talks about the sons of the foreigner who join themselves to the Lord, to serve him, to love him. And in case we don't know what that means, Isaiah goes on to explain what the foreigner will do, the one who's not born Jewish will do when he wants to serve and love the Lord, to keep from defiling the Shabbat. Someone who holds fast my covenant, the Mosaic covenant. Even them I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Bring to the temple to worship, to praise, in the Jewish center, heartland of what worship and praise is and sacrifice. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, which means they're fully accepted as part of what it means to be Israel, to be Jewish, for their sacrifices to be accepted in this way. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, not just for the Jewish people, for every single one of the nations who are called to come and join Israel, come and join us. This house of prayer will be for anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord. But this, of course, is focused within Judaism, the revelation of Judaism, the covenants of Moses, and so on. The Lord God who gathers the outcasts of Israel says, "Yet I will gather to him others besides those who are gathered to him." It's fascinating when you see it that way, that the Lord God doesn't just look at our own people, Israel, but he's also concerned with reaching out to the nations with this message as well. It's a message of salvation for the Jew first, of course, exactly as it says. It has to be for our people first, but then it's also for the nations. We have to take this message of salvation and good news out to the world, because the temple was not just built for us as a nation to worship him, it was built for anyone who would turn to the Lord and come and join this holy nation, come and join this people of God and worship Adonai. And we're so caught up with this idea of ethnicity and DNA and racial theory in these days that we've become so blinded that we can barely see beyond the end of our own noses as regards this. This is not about an ethnic or a DNA people in that sense. It's about a people of faith that God has created to be his people, to worship in the temple that he has created. And we shouldn't be surprised that the temple is a house of prayer for all people to come to, because if you go back to the first book of Kings, and we hear exactly what Shlomo says when he builds that temple, he says, moreover, this is in chapter 8, moreover, concerning a foreigner who is not of your people, let's make it absolutely clear, but has come from a far country for your name's sake, Adonai, for they will hear of your name and your outstretched arm. When he comes and prays, here in heaven your dwellings, do according to all which the foreigner calls to you, that all peoples of the earth may know your name and fear you, as do your people Israel, that they may know that this temple which I have built is called by your name. Again, it's fascinating that one of the core elements really of the temple and its place within Judaism was not just to be that focus of worship and prayer for Israel, the physical nation, the physical descendants of Abraham, and that is important. There's no way you get around that. Jewishness is part of physical descent from Abraham in that way. But it's not only that. It never has been only that. You'll know Judaism has always been open to converts. If it was only DNA, it would never have been possible to convert to Judaism, in which case Ruth the Moabitess would not have come in either. And yet, as we know even from traditional Jewish thinking, there were the pages of the Torah are full of those who've converted to Judaism down the centuries and the millennia. The focus of the temple was a focus of prayer for any who would come and join us, anyone who will come join us and worship the God of Israel. And I have an interesting hunch and a little thought about this. You know, when Yeshua criticizes the temple in the first century, and we're so focused on the turning of the tables of the money changers and so on, and we have got this fixation that his main focus at that point is that he's anti-commerce in some way, or people shouldn't be selling what they're selling in whatever part of the temple precincts. There may be some truth in that. But listen to what Yeshua says when he's criticizing that situation. He says, you've made my house a den of thieves, but it should be a house of prayer for all nations. This is critical. Yeshua backs up this verse, this quote that leads us all the way back to Shlomo when he first built it. His criticism is that the temple at that point is restricted. That people from the other nations who are meant to be responding to God aren't able to come in and worship the God of Israel. There's a kind of veiled criticism of the way the temple structure is and the temple institution is, and the people who are leading at that time. Now we know the temple was corrupt. We know the Essenes have got it in many of their records in the Dead Sea Scrolls and everything else. There was a corruption at the very heart of it from the Hasmonean descendants who were running the temple. We know there was corruption, but it seems the temple as an institution had lost its way and lost its focus as being a hub for those of the nations too, who should come and worship and pray there. And in Yeshua's choice of the verse that he uses here to criticize the temple that day seems to indicate he was not happy. And we know this is the case because, of course, after the Shavuot, after Yeshua's death and resurrection, we know the biggest outreach, Jewish outreach program to the nations began and has run for 2,000 years, and that the Gentiles, the nations, have responded to the name of the God of Israel and the name of the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua Mashiachenu. Enormously successful. Through the ages now, so many people of the nations have come, as it were, even metaphorically, to worship in the temple in that way. It's meant to be for the nations and every Gentile who chooses to respond to come in. But let's not forget, it's on Jewish terms. The terms of the Mosaic covenants, as it says there, who will join himself to the Lord, keep the Shabbat, keep the Mosaic covenant, the covenants there. And then everyone is free to come in. Everyone is free to enter the temple, bring their sacrifice, and have their sacrifices accepted before the Lord. This is a core idea and concept of this Jewish universal thinking within Messianic Judaism, and also within even traditional Judaism. Jewish universalism is there to show us as Jews we have to reach out to the world with the truth, the love and mercy and kindness of God that he's shown us. And we need to reach out to the world and say to them too, all this and salvation in the name of Yeshua is available to you too. Come and worship with us. Thank you for listening today. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Toda Rabbi.